Hello and welcome to Donington Park for the Donington Decider. Last time out of Brands Hatch, we weren't sure if we were going to have a decider, but indeed we do because of what happened with the Nearies at ABBA Racing. Ian Loggy just over to my left at the moment has just been stretching. He looks incredibly nervous ahead of this qualifier today, ahead of the final race tomorrow. He has one hand on the trophy in GT3. In GT4, it's Darren Turner and Matt Topham that are looking top of the pile, but they are being chased down very, very significantly with the Audi of Stenham Fielding and Richard Williams. Here at Donington, though, it's currently dry, but over my shoulder there is rain off in the distance, and huge amounts of it as well. My weather app, and there are many out there, my weather app tells me it's going to rain for the next 10 minutes or so, which should make it very exciting for the GT3s in the AM classes when the less experienced drivers go out on track. But I'll be handing over to Andy and to Harry to talk you through as the cars start to make their ways out of their garages. Ian Loggy in position. He needs to do an absolute stormer here today to give himself the best possible chance tomorrow. But like I say, Andy McEwen is going to be commentating through qualifying and the race tomorrow, and this time he's joined by the wonderful Harry Benjamin.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. Great to have you here in the commentary box, Harry. What a great weekend for you to make your British GT debut, because this is the final round, the Donington Decider. We're used to very tense and dramatic championship deciders here at Donington. Normally, though, the tension sort of bubbles away in qualifying, and then it builds to a crescendo in the race. But this weather that everyone in typical British fashion is talking about is going to be a real curveball, and I think it's going to make this qualifying session particularly dramatic.
Yeah, you can really see the clouds coming in as well. The wind is picking up. Checks in the post to Bryn for that wonderful introduction as well. But it's exciting. British GT, of course, here in Donington 30 years ago at this very racetrack. It all kicked off. It all started. So what a lovely sort of round way to seal off the championship this year. And there you have your Drivers' Championship points after 8 rounds. It's tight, but Ian Loggy, the favourite at the moment.
He's got a good lead, hasn't he? A top 5 finish tomorrow will guarantee him the championship. That sounds easy. It isn't easy. It is not easy to finish inside the top 5 in these races, especially at a circuit like Donington Park. Ian Loggy has the pressure of being the points leader as well on his shoulders, and mathematically he can still be beaten by 3 other driver pairings. Adam Ballon and Sandy Mitchell are the most likely to do it, but mathematically James Cottingham and Lewis Williamson in the 2Cs Mercedes and Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton's Enduro Motorsport McLaren could pip Loggy to the championship. So it's certainly by no means over here, and if Ian Loggy were to have some problems tomorrow, then it would spice things up an awful lot. We've got success penalties to talk about as well when we get into the race. Right now it is qualifying that is about to be getting underway. Before that happens, though, we can have a chat to Ian Loggy's co-driver, Jules Gounon, back this weekend, and he's catching up now with Bryn.
Jules, first of all, congratulations on another trophy for your cabinet last time out in the Fanatec GT World Challenge Series, the Europe Series. You're here now, though, with Ian Loggy, and he's never won this outright. He's desperate to do it this year, and it's going to fall on your shoulders when you take over from him for the second qualifier.
Yeah, well, as I say to Yen, I think we should not take the pressure. I told him, look, if you're meant to be champion, you will be champion. If not, it's like this, it's destiny. So I think we take off the pressure out of Yen and also out of me for this. We're just going to enjoy a nice weekend in a beautiful track. I wish I could say sunny England, but currently it's not the case. But yeah, I'm just enjoying a lot in British GT, and I was really sad when I couldn't drive in Brands Hatch.
You've made a real impression since you've been in British GT, the rounds you have done. Ian is going to have to lean on you a fair bit, isn't he, this weekend, to keep his nerves under control as well. And of course, when you take over tomorrow and you have the final stint in the car as well, I know he's going to be jumping up and down, watching everything there on the screen. How do you go about keeping his nerves in check and keeping him on a fairly even keel?
Yeah, I try to bring him let's say the experience I have from the different championship we have been fighting for, and the best is not to think about the championship. When you have a tendency to think about the championship you are playing with, then you get stressed and then you make mistakes. So I think since we arrived, we are telling to each other, let's take it as it's the last race of the season. We are enjoying. We had a fantastic time. I really enjoyed driving with Yen. He's a fantastic amateur. So now green flag, so I really hope it goes well for us.
Best of luck. Well, the green flag has gone, as you can see. They are going out on track. It is still currently dry, and it's actually got a bit clearer as well over my shoulder, so maybe no rain. Who knows?
I admire your optimism, Bryn. I'm not convinced I share it, but I admire it. It looks very gloomy, doesn't it? The light sort of takes on this appearance of imminent rain. I'm surprised, therefore, Harry, that this car is not on track already. It hasn't even got any tyres on it yet. Ian Loggy in no hurry to get out onto the track. Has he got a better weather app than we do you think?
Maybe he's got a hidden card up his sleeve that we don't know about, or he's just waiting to let everybody else out, get the track put space, see where the land lies, maybe let the track rubber in a little bit. But he has got to be careful, because if the rain does suddenly come in, well, it's a bit game over, really. If you look out, even just outside of our commentary box, and we're just by the end of the pit lane exit, look to your left, it's grey, it's dark. Look to your right, it's blue sky and white fluffy clouds. So you can even see those spots of rain maybe coming out on some of the windscreens too. But there you have it. He obviously heard me. Tyres getting on, and he'll be out momentarily.
Yeah, absolutely, because remember that this session is one of 2 GT3 qualifying sessions, but they're both of equal importance. The AM drivers go out now and have 10 minutes to set a lap time. Their fastest time is then added to the fastest time set by the pro drivers in the next session. So if one of your drivers has a bad session, be that because they make a mistake, they don't get the lap time in, or because they're caught out by the weather, then that will have an effect on your grid position. And the last thing Loggy needs is to be starting mid-pack for the 2-hour race tomorrow, because that's where dramas can occur. It's Nick Halstead who will lead them through onto their first flying lap then, the number 40 McLaren. There is Richard Neary aboard the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes, with which he took his and his son Sam's first win together in the championship in the summer of last year. So we know they go well around here. And Richard Neary, as another Mercedes driver, I'm sure has a bit of a vested interest in perhaps helping out Ian Loggy for the championship. But right now, he's on his own, he's got some nice clear air, Harry, and he's gunning for a quick lap.
Absolutely, lights are on as well, so you can see that maybe a bit of the daylight starting to escape us a little bit too. That Mercedes looking sublime as it makes its way downhill in this early part of the lap. Straight ahead of him, he's got clear air as well as he approaches uphill now into the tricky right-hander, actually. Really difficult to get that wrong and run out wide. The gravel there, not going to be your friend, but he navigates it very nicely indeed, does the Team ABBA Racing number 8 Mercedes. Glowing, actually, in the bit of daylight that's just about left, but got a bit of traffic behind him as well. But a decent first couple of sectors. But time to find early stages still as he goes through the S's. Yeah,
right now, fastest through the first sector is Adam Ballon. That's important because remember, he's a championship contender. That was a drop of rain on the screen I spotted at the Fogarty S's. Fastest in the middle sector is Darren Leung, who's making his British GT debut in this GT3 Century Motorsport BMW. But that looks a little bit damp to me. We're not yet seeing any sort of grooves being cut through the grease, but it's definitely raining at that end of the circuit, and I think it's raining at Redgate Corner as well near us. So the track conditions are now worsening by the second, and already it's showing because off into the gravel trap goes the number 11 Paddock Motorsport McLaren. That is Mark Smith, who's backwards in the Redgate gravel trap. And that could bring about a stoppage in the session. So those who have set lap times now, Darren Leung fastest, Richard Neary's off the road as well. Darren Leung could be sitting pretty here, Harry.
So yeah, exactly. The rain though coming down. You can just see on board with the Ballon Mitchell car as well. Look at the windscreen covered in spots of rain. Trying to come around the final corner now. Just about gets it done and straight into the pit lane. Rain coming down. Red flag.
Yeah, red flag out, as I suspected, because we've got that Mark Smith car off. Now, we have had 8 drivers set lap times. Darren Leung fastest, Richard Neary second, Nick Halstead third. Mark Smith had just gone 4th fastest before he deposited the McLaren in the gravel at Redgate. Simon Orange was 5th in the number 67 McLaren. Stuart Proctor 6th. 7th for Andre Borodin. Last we saw of him, he was crashing in qualifying at Brands Hatch a few weeks ago. And Simon Watts in the number 2 McLaren. Nobody else has set a lap time, and within that nobody else are our 3 championship contenders. So none of those cars have actually set a lap. Now, what I'm getting at here is if this rain persists, when they restart the race, the track conditions are going to be worse. They're going to be slower, presumably, than they were in the first 4 minutes of the session. We might not see any further improvements within the session, and this could really jumble the grid for tomorrow.
Well, you warned me that British GT would be exciting and fun, and it's already delivering and teeing up for a brilliant weekend of racing, of course, back in Donington Park as well for another race this year, having been here a few months ago now, wasn't it? But the full Grand Prix layouts now being drenched, it looks like, certainly at this part of the circuit, in rain. But by the pit lane and down the main straight, much lighter, and if anything, really, but the wind certainly flowing. So that's the tricky bit, isn't it? When it's raining hard at one part of the circuit and pretty dry on the other.
Exactly, and it's a low-grip circuit at the best of times, Donington Park, and certainly, you can see how much it's been raining because there's a dry patch underneath where the McLaren's been sat for only a few minutes in the Redgate gravel trap. But yes, low-grip circuit anyway, and lots of the drivers saying that even when it was dry, there was very little rubber down on the track, having been washed away in the rain and the wind. A few of our spectators nearly getting blown away as they've picked perhaps a slightly vantage point at slightly too high an altitude to watch this particular qualifying session. They're not going to see an awful lot from there. Ian Loggy might be quite grateful that no one's watching him at the moment because our championship leader, having not yet set a time, and this is only adding to the pressure atop our leading driver Ian Loggy, gunning for his first ever British GT Championship, but conditions certainly not all that favourable out there. Right, we've got the number 91 BMW fastest at the moment. Darren Leung got his debut in the championship, has set the fastest time in this session, and his teammate Alex Sims is in the pits now with Bryn.
Well, sometimes the rain comes at the right time, doesn't it? You're banking a lap there. It's looking pretty good already for you guys.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much too soon. We've still obviously got half of the AM session to go, but it looks like the rain's intensified enough that it's probably not going to go faster than that. Looks like the track's fully wet. I haven't obviously been round, but just watching the TV, it looks like that's probably that session done. It's still pretty close, actually, for the people who've done laps. It's only like a few tenths in between positions, so you know, I've still got a very clear job to do to go out and be fast, but hopefully we're fighting for the top positions.
Yeah, Richard's not far off of you at all, but it looks like it's going to stay tricky conditions out there. There's a beautiful rainbow just off to our right at the moment as well, so maybe you're at the end of the rainbow at the moment, you never know. But we've seen you go out there in the car looking pretty good when you've had your moments, shall we say, and the car itself on track, a new car for the British GT this season, and the BMW looks pretty mega.
Yeah, it's a brilliant car to drive. Yeah, we've been up there in certain times in practice. Obviously, you don't know what everyone's run plans are and stuff, but yeah, the crunch will be how qualifying goes now for me and how the combined times look.
Irrespective of how you get on today with qualifying, what were your aims, what were your hopes before you came to Donington for this round?
Honestly, it's really hard to say. You know, I did Brands Hatch with Henry Dawes, who was a new driver to the car in the championship. Darren, again, is new to this car, new to this GT3. So, you know, initially you think, you know, you're up against it, honestly, because you're coming in at the last part of the season, and the guys are other guys on the grid are fully in tune with everything, having done the full season. But yeah, things can go your way, and Darren's doing a damn good job. So yeah, fingers crossed it can stay well.
Just hinted there that two different drivers in the last two rounds for you. You're the constant in the car then. So how do you go about preparing when you have a different driver? Are you changing the setup for each of the drivers' individual, should we say, advantages, you know?
Well, I mean, yeah, you have to work with the driver, with your co-driver, regardless of whether it's Pro-Am or fully Pro series, to find a compromise between you. But honestly, what I would like from the car is much what Darren wants from the car. We've tweaked it here and there, but really not much change at all. So yeah, it's lovely when you work with someone who's, you know, on the same page as you.
Alex, good luck this weekend, and absolutely stunning rainbow off here at the moment at Donington Park, so maybe that bodes well for the weekend. Alex, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the session will restart in a minute, by the way, 16:15 here at Donington Park. There is the Paddock Motorsport McLaren, which once again has a new AM driver at the wheel, Mark Smith, subbing for Calvin Fletcher. Martin Plowman, the pro, still very much will be a part of the driving lineup. However, I don't think that car will now be able to rejoin the session because it was the cause of the red flag, and because I think that was the reason for the red flag as opposed simply to a change in weather. But the weather now doesn't look half as bad as it did 5 minutes ago, so the decision has been made to restart the session as soon as they can and send them all out there. But now, Harry, what do you do? Do you go out on wet tyres? Do you chance it and try and get some slicks up to temperature? What do you do, especially if you're one of those championship contending teams?
Well, exactly. If you chance it, there's an easy chance you play a blinder and go straight to the top. But you can also find yourself in the gravel, maybe even in the wall. So do you play it safe and stick to that wet tyre? Unlimited amount of wets, at least, for the drivers. so they'd have to think about sort of tyre management or anything like that. But really, I think the ball's in the drivers' courts who have set lap times. As the green light comes on at the end of the pit lanes, just over 6 minutes then left of this first GT3 qualifying session. The AM drivers at the wheel, Young currently at the top of the timings. So what have we got out there then? A bit of a mixture.
Yes, I suspect wet tyres are the way to go. Certainly the Century BMW of Darren Leung had wet Pirellis fitted to it. It does look like it's too wet for the slicks. I'm certainly here. It is very wet and still raining down at the old hairpin. So I think wet tyres are going to be the order of the day. We've sort of got a second part to this qualifying session then, because it's doubtful that we will see that 1 minute 29.8 beaten by Darren Leung. Therefore, those who haven't yet sat times, Loggy being one of them, the best he can hope for here is break into the top 10. And that's not the end of the world, because this doesn't decide the grid. It all now hinges on what the pros can do in the next session. So Loggy needs to do as well as he can and hope that Jules Gounon can maybe make up the rest.
Definitely wet out there, isn't it? You can see the spray being kicked up. I think the driest part of the track is actually probably along the main straight. I think the rain that has come is fairly light around here. But for Ian Loggy, you're right. I think it's about damage limitation now. Of course, it's not over. And he knows he's kind of already got one hand on this championship trophy, 24.5 points ahead. But this is racing. Absolutely anything can happen, as we've seen in Donington Park, as we've seen in the British GT Championship before. And he'll be thinking back to last year when it was so close to happening and it didn't. And already car in the gravel is the number 24.
Well, this will be another red flag even, I'm sure. Andre Borodin off. This is his second British GT qualifying session. It's the second time he's gone off the road. This looks awfully like an outlap as well. It's just no grip. That's got to be slick tyres, surely. He had absolutely no purchase at all. The car just sidestepped into the gravel. There's no damage done, but we do indeed have another red flag because that car is clearly in a dangerous position. So still, nobody new set a lap time. We've still only had 8 drivers setting times, and this is now becoming a very, very difficult qualifying session for some teams. Darren Leung, therefore, remains the fastest driver, but a second red flag of the session, and that goes to show just how tricky the conditions are. That was an outlap. He was hardly moving at all, and still couldn't keep it on the island.
8 drivers, as you say, with lap times, about 7, with none on the boards. What was the fastest lap time we got in the end? A 1:29.8, 0.3, the fastest lap time. So nearly 2.5 tenths the gap at the top. And the 8th and last, at the moment, lap time that was set, 1:33.1. And is that another car? It is. It's number 40 this time, doing a little bit of a reverse off the grass. He's had a moment.
Yeah, Nick Halstead at the top of the Craner curve. That's an odd place to end up. Again, shows how tricky it is. So not a good day for McLarens right now. We've had one causing one red flag, another one off down at the old hairpin, and the spin there for Halstead too, who now tippy-toes his way down through the Craner curves. Nick Halstead was in the wrong place at the wrong time when Ian Loggy and Adam Ballon tangled at Brands Hatch last time out. There is Adam Ballon right on cue. And poor old Nick Halstead ended up going off into the gravel to avoid them and was out of the race. So Halstead has been driving very well this year, but he unfortunately had that little rotation in the wet conditions just now. Still sits 3rd place, though, within this qualifying session. So for the second time, then, everyone heads back to the pit lane. For the second time, the clock stops, this time with just under 4.5 minutes to go. So they have got time. If they can stop throwing themselves at the scenery, they have got time to go out and set some lap times. But if we were to have another car off the road, I fear that might be it.
It just underlines how tricky these conditions are. I think as the number 24 gets a little bit of help from the tractor, as we are under red flag conditions, so no other cars on track. Great work from the marshals there. Super speedy as always, especially at these brilliant British tracks, the British GT Championship races. I wonder how those 2 people are that were struggling with their raincoats are getting on, because that was the red flag entertainment from last time. But at the moment, everyone then back into the pits, twiddling thumbs a bit, figuring out what to do in these last 4.5 minutes, which will hopefully get underway momentarily as the McLaren is back on track now and should hopefully be able to get back to the pits under its own steam if it can restart. And the fast lane, though, is now open, so I would presume we'll get a restart in a minute or so.
Fingers crossed, yes. Sandy Mitchell watching on from the pit lane, and I believe that Bryn Lucas is down there to have a chat with one of our championship contenders.
Yeah, you can just make out the eyes of Sandy Mitchell peering through his visor here. Sandy, looking out there, it's raining, it's not raining, it's raining, it's not. So what has Adam told you about the track? Is it full wet? Are there dry patches?
Yeah, right now it looks like it's fully damp, which is obviously frustrating for us and a few of the other cars who haven't set a lap time yet. I thought it was a little bit poor to throw the red flag so quickly when there was a number of cars in the last couple of corners completing a lap, which would have made a lot more sense and everyone would have had a lap time in the dry. But yeah, the early red flag call has kind of meant that the grid's now divided in two between the guys that are going to set a lap time on wets and the ones at the front on slicks. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame really, but we've just got to do the best we can with what we've got now.
4 minutes 26 on this session to go here. As you say, you know, it's going to be tricky for you guys to get your way up the order, particularly on the wet tyres. Is there any chance that the track could dry with the amount of action that's going to be on there for the end of your session when you go out?
Yeah, it looks like it could be quite dry for the end of the pro session, but whether it would be a slick tyre or not, I'm not so sure. But I think it'll be sort of in between for the last couple of laps of our session. So yeah, that'll make it interesting. We'll just have to see what happens.
And I suppose for yourself and Adam, you know, the championship isn't won or lost today. It all happens tomorrow, so you just got to get your heads down. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it was a good opportunity. Well, luckily for us, our championship contenders are also in the same boat as us. They've not set a lap time yet. So it would have been a nice opportunity to try and get a bit of a jump on them. But like you say, we've just got to do the best we can, try and win this second half of the quali, and yeah, give ourselves a good shot for tomorrow.
Best of luck, Sandy. So there you go. Wets or dries, we don't know, but probably wets for the rest of the sessions.
Right, okay, so that's Sandy Mitchell's opinion on the situation. Not particularly happy with the way things are going. You can sort of understand why, but you can also understand why the red flags came out at the time they did. There's a real hurry this time to get out onto the circuit, onto what should now be a drying circuit. It's very much stopped raining, at least at our end of the track. Still wet tyres there fitted to the 76 McLaren, which has Mia Fluid at the wheel. That car was running quickly in the practice sessions earlier on, but unsurprisingly, it's the cars who haven't set times yet who are up the front of that queue. So it is the number 20 Mercedes of Davidson at the front. That is Graham Davidson in his third, maybe fourth different car of the season. He has been the super sub of 2022, and he's in the Mercedes. This time he's got the number 4 Mercedes behind him, the 2C's car of James Cottingham. He's not set a time yet either. I mean, this is going to be a very, very busy scramble here, Harry, to try and get some clear track position when they do get the session back underway.
Absolutely. Well, he's just sitting there waiting. You can see how it stands at the moment. Of course, we got about 2 laps, I think, in before the rain came down. And Leon with the fastest lap time, then a 1:29.8. 2.5 tenths to gap at the moment. Probably not going to see those times in these last 4.5 minutes, but it stopped raining. So, well, at least from where we're watching. And it's green flag, track back out. And it does look like we are going to get some qualifying underway. Just 4 minutes to go there. But it's interesting, though, because they're going to have to set lap times regardless, aren't they?
They are, because there is a rule, I'm sure. If you don't set a lap time in a qualifying session, then you are at the back. We've seen this before. If a car gets damaged in Q1 and doesn't go out in Q2, it's at the back of the grid regardless. Now, whether this now falls under some force majeure measure, I don't know. We're trying to get a definitive answer on that, but certainly there will be a real hurry now to get a time on the board. For reference, by the way, a good GT3 time in the dry round here, even for an AM, is somewhere in the high 26s, low 27s. So we never got down to that pace. That's not a particularly quick time set by Darren Young because he hadn't yet got into the groove. He hadn't yet got any temperature into these slick Pirellis at the time. It is entirely possible that a driver could go out on wets and get somewhere in amongst the times that have already been set, but they just haven't had the chance to do so yet. Jules Goon on there watching on from the Ram Racing garage as Ian Logging desperately hopes now for no more red flags in the remaining 3 minutes and 10 seconds.
Yeah, lap record round here in a GT3 car, the SRO Motorsports McLaren 720S holds that from earlier this year, 1:26.309, if we're being precise. Also, a little bit of an update on what is going on in terms of tyres with Sandy Mitchell. They've said, going to go out on wets, set a time, and then see about slicks in the last few minutes of the session. So, don't want to gamble your cars, especially when we've already seen straight away both McLaren cars sliding off the road in the tricky conditions when we did get the first restart after the red flag.
So that's interesting. So that's the next session. They're already planning ahead to that session when Sandy will jump into that Lamborghini, currently piloted by Adam Ballan. So they clearly don't think it's going to dry out within the first few minutes of Q2. Right, dare I say it, we've got drivers coming through now to start flying laps. There goes Ian Logie. He is on a flying lap. He just needs the red flags to stay away for the next minute and 30 or so, and he needs to not go into the gravel at Redgate, which he nearly does, and he'll be all good. There's no spray being kicked up behind the cars at this part of the circuit, even through the craners where it was sopping wet last time we saw the cars at speed. It looks like it's drying out quite nicely. Bit of spray as he gets to the bottom of the hill, but Ian Loggy is at least on a lap, and so far so good. He's keeping it on the island. He's a bit sideways out of the old hairpin, but he can live with that, and he is at least halfway around towards setting a time of some sort. How quick it will be, we'll find out in good time.
Well, it's a green sector 1, but it's quite a way down, obviously, on the fastest lap time at the moment, given the change of conditions. Lights on then for that Mercedes AMG of Ian Loggy, currently at the top of the standings in GT3, could take the overall title this weekend. 24.5 points the gap. He needs to finish, we think, in the top 5 to secure that. Of course, his co-driver this weekend, Jules Gounon, not in that running due to missing a few rounds, but to have Jules Gounon as your other driver in that car, I think he can feel fairly confident. Losing a lot of time, though, in that middle sector. Well, it's amplified due to the wet conditions, but he is really teetering around, just trying to keep it on the black stuff into the Melbourne hairpin, and trying to touch that throttle pedal just to not spin up the rears too much, gets it laid down, and out he comes to these last couple of corners.
Yeah, sector 1 isn't too bad, is it? Because that's the drier of the 3 sectors. It's the middle sector where it's really wet. We saw that up at the top end of the circuit. That's why he's dropping time, but it doesn't really matter because he is now going to log a time, and that is something. Across the line goes Ian Loggy, and the championship leader is 10th fastest. It leaves just 3 drivers now who haven't set times. Andrew Howard making a welcome return in the Beach Team Aston Martin. Adam Ballon just goes through into 12th position. So too does Howard, who stays 14th. So Mia Flewitt now, the last driver yet to get to the line. So Mia Flewitt will very shortly, right on cue, she does now come through to set a lap time. No one, though, troubling the very top of the order. Morgan Tilbrook, the fastest of those to have set a time, I think, post-red flag, is 9th fastest on a 1:43.5. The fastest in the session, remember, Darren Young on slicks earlier on, a 1:29.8.
Checkered flag out now, so final lap times. A bit of news from the number 11 paddock Motorsport. Mark Smith, we saw him off early doors in this qualifying session. They didn't come back out, so they weren't going to bother with another lap. They were happy with what they set. As you can see, he's up in 4th at the moment, so Martin Planman will take over that in the next GT3 qualifying session. So they called it early, not wanting to take the risk, and you could just see why as we ride on board with the Ballon 72 car for Barwell Motorsport, right up behind the car in front, getting a face full of water, face full of spray. He's going to try to move down the inside into the S's.
Dear, that was a low percentage move, I think they'd call it, and he sensibly waits till the exit of the chicane to get alongside a struggling Andrew Howard. This looks like a half-decent lap for Adam Ballon. No personal best sectors coming in, though, and he slithers up the inside of the Aston at Melbourne hairpin. That will certainly lose him a bit of time as well. You can see the time they're dropping in the middle sector, only a couple of seconds slower than a dry pace through sector 1, but sector 2 is where they're really struggling. So many drivers now taking the checkered flag. Ian Loggy just went through, stayed in 11th position by the end of part 1 of qualifying. But there's quite a gulf, isn't there, between those who set the times in the dry and those who set the times in the wet. So the job of the pro drivers now becomes that bit harder. It is entirely likely here, Harry, that all of our 4 championship contending GT3s are going to be starting in the second half of the field, because a gulf of some 9 or 10 seconds between a dry and a wet time, that's too much, surely, for even the best pro to overcome in their session.
Bodes well for the racing, doesn't it, though?
It does.
Bit of a fight back on our hands then during the race. Not quite sure what the weather's set to do on Sunday for race day. We'll find that out, but knowing the British weather at this time of year, it can be a bit all over the place as well, especially as we're right by the East Midlands Airport as well. So wind always at a high around here too. Checkered flag out, though, and we'll get ready for the second qualifying session for the GT3 cars, which is going to be a bit of a quick start because we still got the first qualifying session cars coming in before the Q2 then gets underway. So thick and fast British GT action here in Donington.
Indeed so. The one saving grace is that the track is likely to keep drying out, so there might not be quite such a rush to get out in this second session. So Darren Leung then, on his debut in the championship, is fastest at the moment for SRO Motorsport in the BMW. Second, Richard Neary, the Donington specialist. And then look at all those McLarens. Nick Halstead, Mark Smith, Simon Orange, Stuart Proctor, Andre Borodin, and Simon Watts towards the back of the top 10. And then the gap, those top 8 covered by 3.4 seconds, then a further 9 seconds back to the first wet time, if you like, set by the Enduro Motorsport McLaren, Morgan Tilbrook, the 2Cs Mercedes, third in the championship. Remember, they are 10th fastest. Barwell, second in the championship, are only 11th fastest. And Ian Loggy, the championship leader, the 12th at the moment on the grid. But we now take those times, we add them to the fastest time set by the pro drivers in this session, and there's Jules Gounon about to jump into the Ram Racing Mercedes, the number 6 car. His teammate Ian Loggy fighting for the championship, but that car is only just arriving in its pit box, and Harry, the Nearys have already serviced the car. They've got Sam Neary in, and he is ready and raring to go in the next 30 seconds or so when Q2 begins.
Well, they've seen what Q1 has brought, and track position in the pit lane clearly clearly best to be right at the front. Get your lap time in early doors before there's any kind of risk of any more rain or any more red flags, and suddenly you're under pressure. All it takes is for one red flag to set you right back in your program, get you out of the swing of things, and it's so important, especially when you're sharing a car with another driver too, as the British GT Championship is completely based on. You've really got to get into that flow early doors, especially with the program that's being sent. So driver changes taking place in the pit lane at the moment before we get underway very, very quickly indeed, and we are straight away, matter of minutes, and we're straight out for GT3 qualifying 2, and in the number 8 car as well, straight out, as you say, Sam Neary in that Mercedes, followed by the McLaren 2. And how's the spray looking? See, it's dry-ish in this first sector, but then it gets wet.
Yeah, it's this section, isn't it? From the middle of the Craners all the way around to sort of Coppice Corner is where it's really, really damp. And I'm not convinced that's going to dry out in the next 10 minutes. So I think wet tyres will be the order of the day. Some fresh, wet Pirellis being applied to Ian Loggy's rather grimy-looking Mercedes. And Ian sat ready and waiting to go. As soon as the car drops, he will head out into the fast lane and onto the circuit. So qualifying session 2 then, Sam Neary jumping into the number 8 car. Jamie Stanley we've got on track in the number 40 McLaren. James Kelly in the number 2 car, which actually had a tangle with a GT4 runner in the practice session earlier on. But these pro drivers, many of them factory drivers as well, of course. We've mentioned quite a lot Jules Gounon, factory Mercedes driver. It shows how seriously the manufacturers take this, Harry, to send over their very best fully paid factory drivers into British GT.
Absolutely, to have somebody like Jules Gounon, 27-year-old Frenchman as well, wrapped up GT World Challenge recently, and also he's been a long time in that series too, and going very well. 24 Hours of Spa winner, a Bathurst 12 Hours winner as well. Name it, Jules Gounon has probably either won it or done very, very well indeed. So to have him on the grid alongside our other pro drivers too, and sharing the cars with the likes of Ian Loggy going for the championship, as I said earlier in Q1, what a man to have beside you in that car. That would fill me with confidence, even in the trickiest of conditions.
And what I love about British GT especially is you've got these factory drivers, and then you've got the Sam Nearys of the world, the Jamie Stanleys of the world, who are very, very good drivers. They're every bit as quick as the factory drivers. They just haven't yet had that opportunity to go on and race internationally for a manufacturer, but they get a great chance now to prove their worth against those internationally acclaimed drivers. So Sam Neary we've seen go toe-to-toe with the likes of Jules Gounon in the past, and he will aim to do so again this weekend, I'm sure. He is definitely one of the favourites for pole position. Remember, that car, the second fastest in Q1. It's the combined times that will set the grid, and the times you'll see on your screen, the timing tower down the left-hand side of your screen, that will take that into account. So it won't necessarily be the individual session times that you will see. It is the combined times, bearing in mind those top 8 have quite a big advantage already coming into the session.
Yeah, it's about 10 seconds faster they're going to be, near or nearabouts, isn't it? So it's almost like fighting a losing battle, but it's never over until it's over, and already this qualifying session is shaping this weekend up. The Donington Decider in British GT to be an absolutely fascinating watch, so do make sure you come back for the racing action tomorrow too. Qualifying 2 for GT3 now underway, 7 minutes on the clock. Combined times will set the overall qualifying position, and that top 8 with the advantage at the moment, all going out early with their AM drivers in the first qualifying session and getting a lap in before the wet weather came down. But we've got Some great pedigree out there, including the likes of Alexander Sims on an outlap at the moment. Martin Plowman going very quick as well in the second sector, and Stanley too, also going quickly. So first couple of lap times, get ready. They're coming across the line now.
They are indeed. Jamie Stanley then goes to the top, quicker than Sam Neary. That's interesting. So that car ahead by just over a second at the moment in the fight for provisional pole position. We'll wait for some of the other times to come in. James Kell has gone through with a slightly slower time there in third. Marcus Clutton, though, he was setting purple sectors, and he has now gone fastest. The dominant winner here, alongside his teammate Morgan Tilbrook, of course, back in the summer, on a provisional pole right now by 0.2 of a second. You're riding on board, though, with Sandy Mitchell. He's fighting that Lamborghini as he comes out of Coppice Corner. I was watching this on board during a dry second free practice, and I actually remarked to Sandy how stable the car looked from the onboard. It is anything but now as he wriggles his way onto the GP loop.
Indeed, using the full Grand Prix layout, which is always a spectacular watch as well. Jules Gounon crosses the line to set his first competitive lap time, gets himself up into 6th spot, Proctor just behind him, but we're on board with that Lamborghini of Sandy Mitchell through the Melbourne hairpin now, uphill. You ride on board in these final couple of corners approaching the braking zone, quite a heavy braking zone really, into the left-hand swinger. You cut this whole bit out if you're doing the short national circuit. Pit lane entry to your left. What's it going to be though for Sandy Mitchell across the line?
Let's find out. Sandy Mitchell goes 5th on combined times. He's fastest in the session, but that would be a top 5 starting position right now on combined times. There are still a handful of drivers, though, who haven't set a time. Jules Gounon, for what it's worth, in the number 6 Mercedes, is currently 5th fastest within this session, and that puts the number 6 car 8th on the grid. So they're improving slightly on where they were, but they are likely to be limited, I think, in how far up the order they can get. Right, this is the car that was fastest in Q1 in the hands of Darren Leung. It's now Alexander Sims, factory BMW driver, who is at the wheel, and this car is a little bit unproven in the wet here in the UK. It went really well at Brands Hatch last time with Henry Dawes joining Alex Sims, but that was a dry, sunny, warm weekend. Here at Donington Park, though, these conditions, how is the BMW going to handle them? Well, we'll find out. In the sectors, he is not troubling the outright fastest times just yet, though.
And Alexander Sims as well, a BMW man through and through, been racing GTs for so long now, you forget how many years. He's won a lot of things, including the 24 Hours of Spa as well, dovetailed single-seaters, Formula E Championship. He brings that chapter to a close because he prefers racing with a tin top, with a roof over his head, but he's going quickly at the moment. It is Sims, no time on the board at the moment. Personal best in Sector 1, 21.9 coming through the first sector, 48 through the second sector. Alexander Sims then in the 91 BMW across the line, should fly up the order, and he does. It's 4th.
4th place on combined times, but 2.9 seconds off pole. And remember, this was a car that was fast in the dry in session 1, so should be up there fighting for pole positions. I suspect there is more to be had from Alex Sims. Right, here comes Jamie Stanley. He is pushing on. He's already sitting on provisional pole position, and he has just done 2 reasonably good sectors. Actually, it's Marcus Clutton going quicker. Slick tyres waiting in the pit lane. It'd be a brave man who stuck slicks on with 3 minutes to go in this session. We need to find Marcus Clutton, though, because Clutton has gone personal best in Sector 1, outright fastest in Sector 2. It's not likely to challenge for overall pole position because of what happened in Q1, but that SRO Motorsport McLaren, we know how well it goes around here, and Marcus Clutton, I think, is about to set a really, really good lap time.
And so far, crucially, stable weather conditions with just a few minutes remaining of this second qualifying for our GT3 races. Quick work from the Lamborghini number 72 pit team as they change those tyres, ready to send him back out. Sandy Mitchell at the wheel of that number 72, the 22-year-old Brit. As there is Ian Loggy, the man with the most to lose this weekend, watching on as his teammate Jules Gounon is in the car. He's now down to 11th at the moment. Everybody with lap times on the board, though. It's overall combined times with their AM counterparts from the first session, and Sims and Pede at the moment with the most amount of work to do right at the back of this pack in the 141.8 for Sims, and Pede, well, 144.3 at the moment combined.
Yeah, Sims is 4.5 seconds off the pace in this session for some reason. Oh, Jules Gounon extracting the maximum from the Mercedes. Mercedes. We've got a new car on provisional pole though. Michael O'Brien in the number 67 McLaren is on pole. Now that is one of several cars which will not score points tomorrow. Again, we'll get to that in the race, I think, rather than overcomplicate this qualifying session, but he has gone fastest and on combined times is now half a second up the road from the Fox Motorsport McLaren. What can Jules Gounon do though? This car at the moment would start the final round of the championship from 11th on the grid. If Gounon can find another couple of seconds though, he could get as far up as 9th. It doesn't sound like a lot, Harry, but that could make a big difference. It could just keep them out of trouble in the opening stages of tomorrow's race, and it's fair to say that Gounon is throwing everything at this.
It could make or break a championship challenge at the moment, but Gounon not lighting up the timing screws, but he doesn't need to light it up massively, but he needs to find a little bit more time. As you say, if he can just find a second or so, it would do wonders for his teammate Ian Loggy. Here is Gounon in that pink and black or blue Mercedes, down into the hairpin, flashing his lights left, right and centre, trying to warn the car in front of him. He's there, really hugs the apex, really tight line there for Jules Gounon.
And another Mercedes has just gone to the top. Sam Neary now on pole position by just over half a tenth of a second now. So Sam Neary quicker than Michael O'Brien. They've got two fights going on. The fight for pole position, which doesn't involve the championship contenders, and the fight to be best of the rest. And Jules Gounon is very much a part of that fight. He comes across the line then, registers a lap time, and that time for Gounon was not an improvement. That's interesting.
Now, how dry is it out there, do you think? Because news from the pit lane, number 72, Sandy Mitchell, has gone out, as he promised us, on the slick tyre.
I wouldn't do it, but then there's a reason I'm a commentator, not a racing driver, I suppose. Sandy, this was the plan, remember? They said they were going to send him out on wet, put in a banker lap, essentially, and it's working. Sandy Mitchell, purple in Sector 1.
Here we go.
Now, this could be interesting. He's got time for this lap. This will be his final one of the session, though, I think. I don't think it'll be enough for pole position, but it could jump them right up the order. How much quicker are the slicks? That's the question. That's Sector 1, a 19.7 for Sandy Mitchell. It's only a tenth or so quicker than they're going on the wets. At the moment, that wouldn't quite be enough. Sam Neary establishes himself even further now on pole position. He's 6.5 tenths clear of Michael O'Brien, and he just squeaked through before the checkered flag. On board with Mitchell.
Here he comes then. Let's see how he's getting on, down into the braking zone for the hairpin. This is where we saw, I think, a McLaren slide off in the first qualifying session for GT3s. He gets it stopped, gets it turned in, and gets it out of the corner in one piece. So far, so good for Sandy Mitchell. But how much time is he actually finding? It was good in the first sector, but that first sector has been dry. So really, as you see him really battle with the steering wheel, what's it going to be for Sandy Mitchell across the line?
It is not an improvement, and that's exactly what you were saying. Sectors 1 and 3, he was good. The middle sector was too wet, but it was worth a go. I mean, they weren't going to lose anything from that as long as he didn't stack the car into a barrier, which is not the Sandy Mitchell way. So it was worth a try, and Sandy Mitchell will end up then 10th on the grid provisionally within the GT3 element of the race tomorrow. We've still got some others who are setting lap times. We've just had Aaron Walker in the 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes number 20 come through. That's another car that won't score points tomorrow. But it looks as though the Nearys at their favourite racetrack are going to get a pole position. They won from about 9th on the grid here last summer when Richard Neary put in a demon first lap to go from 9th to 1st within the first couple of corners. And this time around, he will have significantly less overtaking to do, because regardless of what Sam does on this final lap of the session, it should be pole for the number 8 car.
Donington always throws up a bit of drama, doesn't it? Always. Never fails, whether it's on-track action, whether it's the weather. Doesn't even have to be in the race, even in the qualifying session. There's the two McLarens just in the background of that shot, getting very close behind each other as they came across the line. Checker flag is out, though. And there, well, here's your pole man.
Pole by nearly a second, Harry, because he just improved again on that lap, a 37.0, 9 tenths clear, and actually became the fastest driver in that session. O'Brien had been quicker in Q2, but not by enough to get the pole position, if you follow me, whereas Sam Neary just managed to beat him by about 3 tenths, and that puts him a full second clear on combined time. So we'll run down the full order in a minute, but it does not make for particularly happy reading for Ian Loggy. His car will start out of the top 10. It will, though, start ahead of one of the championship contending cars. The number 4 2Cs Mercedes will start 13th, but it will start immediately behind the number 72 Lamborghini, which will start 10th, and the number 77 McLaren, which will start 9th. So all 4 of our potential champions will be starting in the bottom half of the field, and you'll have some cars at the front half of the field that are perhaps a little bit out of position. You will not want to miss any of the 2-hour race tomorrow, but certainly not the opening few laps, because it could be a very, very exciting start to the always dramatic Donington decider. So let's take a look then, shall we, at the way that provisionally the grid would look for the GT3 cars. GT4 qualifying still to come. It is the Nearys on pole position by a second over Michael O'Brien and Simon Orange in the 67 McLaren. Then it's Jamie Stanley and Nick Holstead's Fox Motorsport example ahead of Martin Plowman. And Mark Smith, that car brought about a red flag in Q1, but still will start from row number 2. The BMW seem to struggle in the wet there. That could be interesting if we get some rain tomorrow. Alex Sims and Darren Leung will start 5th ahead of the number 5 car, and that's a returning Warren Hughes sharing the car with Stuart Proctor. James Kell and Simon Watson next ahead of Ed Peed and Andre Borodin. Then it was Clutton and Tilbrook first of the title contenders starting 9th ahead of Barwell in 10th. Ram Racing's Ian Loggy will start 11th, and the other championship contending car, the number 4 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes, starting a few places further back in 13th. All 15 cars, though, eventually setting lap times. It is a very, very jumbled grid for the first race tomorrow, and it will be led to the green by the always exciting Richard Neary, who is with Bryn.
Well, Richard, sometimes it all comes together really nicely, doesn't it? And you started there beautifully. The rain came down after the red flag, and it all seemed to fall into your hands, didn't it?
Yeah, it was an amazing session, really. All credit to Stuart, our team manager, who said, we need to get out really quick in case the rain comes. He said, just go out. He said, if it starts raining, push on through and try and box one lap. And then obviously at the end, Sam just about did enough to seal it, I think.
Well, you can do pretty well around here. You've seen you win before, so good luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Cheers, mate.
Absolutely right. It was that decision to get out early that benefited them, and the decision not to rush out for Ram Racing that ultimately cost Ian Loggy. And how costly could that decision be come the race tomorrow? We don't have time to dwell on that right now, unfortunately, because GT4 qualifying has already begun, and they're now faced with their own quandary, Harry. It's the same format here, 2 sessions, combined times, etc., etc., but they've now got a drying track. So the lap times at the end of the sessions are likely to be the fastest. Is it dry enough for slicks? If you're out on wet, you've got to look after them. This is a real head-scratcher.
The first sector is dry. I'm convinced of it. It looks dry, it's not kicking up any spray, but it's when you come downhill through the Craner curves that you can just start to see the shadows on the track building up. But let's see how much spray this Audi is kicking up. It's not too bad. Look, we all love sports here. Gamble with the slicks. Do it.
Easy for us to say, isn't it? I actually think that's what Stella have done, though. They look like sticker slick tyres on the number 42 Audi, so I reckon they might have taken the gamble. Remember, this is one of the cars that is fighting for the GT4 championship. We've spoken a lot about the GT3 points, but in GT4 it's actually even tighter. There are, again, 3 teams this time that could mathematically win it, but slightly smaller gaps between them. It's the Matt Topham and Darren Turner Newbridge Motorsport Aston Martin that holds a 12.5-point lead, just to complicate the maths a little bit more, over the Audi that we ride on board with. Richard Williams and Senan Fielding. Stella Motorsport have been really, really rapid in 2022. They've had a couple of races where things haven't quite gone to plan, but even last time out where they were caught out by a poorly timed, for them, safety car, they still managed to finish in second place at Brands Hatch to go along with a further 4 podiums, including 2 wins that they'd had earlier in the season. The third car, that by the way, that could win the championship is the Josh Miller and Jamie Day R Racing Aston Martin. They are a little bit further back, though. They are 20.5 points off the championship lead, but with 37.5 available for a class win within either GT3 or GT4, and no success penalty to go the Aston Martin's way, they are still right in it.
I think GT4 is going to be really one to keep an eye on as well. Well, even after the qualifying, GT3 will certainly not be one to miss. But GT4 already, before qualifying it even happened, looked like it was going to be a bit of a juicy fight as well. It looks dry enough, I think. That Audi was navigating that final sector much better than we've seen already. 7 minutes just over that remain of this first qualifying session for the GT4 drivers. Q1, the AM drivers out in the car as we ride on board with Williams in that Audi.
Absolutely. These GT4 cars, of course, a lot closer to their road-going counterparts, so they are less powerful than the GT3s. They have less aero. A lot of the internal bits and pieces within the steering and the suspension, etc., are a bit more standard, as standard as you can be on an Audi R8. And so, therefore, they might be a bit more manageable in slightly tricky conditions. Again, easy for me to say. I've not had to do it. But this car does look like it is squirming around a little bit less than we saw from some of the GT3 onboards earlier on. negotiates there a car that wasn't yet setting particularly fast sector times. I think a car on an outlap, one of the McLarens, and Richard Williams heads down towards the chicane. He is going quickly at the moment, but I'm convinced that this will not be the fastest lap time of the session. Honestly, if I were out there, I'd be doing just enough to get the heat into the tyres, but not taking the edge off the tyres yet, because if you're on slicks, you want those slicks to be working well in the last couple of minutes, so get the heat in them, but not necessarily pushing right to the limit. And I think that's what's happening. Richard was weaving around there, coming down into the Melbourne hairpin on a nice little Saturday afternoon drive for now.
Absolutely. The track's only going to get quicker. He comes around the final corner now. It's the Ford Mustang GT4 at the top at the moment, a 1:44.3, but it looks like Williams is absolutely going to smash that, and he does with a 1:43.1, and that Audi R8 LMS GT4 car goes straight to the top.
So, GT4 qualifying lap record, that's the unofficial lap record, set by Darren Turner in qualifying earlier this year, a 1:34.0. So a qualifying time for a GT4 car in the dry, on slicks, being driven by a pro driver, is a 34 flat. Now, in GT4, we have fewer Pro-Am entries. The majority of them race within the Silver Cup. So a silver-graded driver, in theory, a bit slower than a Pro, but a bit quicker than an Am. So I would expect a good lap time here in the high 34s, low 35s. We're nowhere near that yet. A 1:43.0 for Tom Edgar, who we're following now in the Toyota, is the fastest time that we've got. He's 25 thousandths quicker than Richard Williams in the Audi, with Tom Rawlings in the number 9 Porsche, BMW, excuse me, in third fastest. Marco Signoretti's Mustang is fourth, and then fifth position for the R-Racing Aston Martin. Our championship leader, meanwhile, Matt Topham, down in eighth position, but he is one of only a handful of out-and-out Am drivers, so you would expect him to be a little bit slower than some of the others he's sharing the track with.
Yeah, a couple of new lineups as well. One to watch out for, perhaps, the number 26 Paddock Motorsport car. Kavi Jundu joins Mo Ritson for this round. The two know each other fairly well, but first time going out together in British GT, I believe, and chatting to Mo even before qualifying today, feeling bullish for them. It's been an up-and-down season, but hopeful for a podium, feeling quick around here and impressed so far by how well they're gelling together. Jundu just setting his first proper lap at the moment, so keep an eye on that number 26 Paddock Motorsport McLaren 570S GT4 car.
Yes, indeed. Hasn't yet set a time, along with a couple of others. Now, about a minute ago, I said the fastest time was a 1:43.0. It's now 1:41.3. We've found nearly 2 seconds since the start of the previous lap, basically. So the lap times are coming down massively. We're into the final few minutes. This now is where I would start to really be pushing. This is when the track is going to be at its best, and the timing screen is lighting up accordingly. We've got purple sectors coming in everywhere. However, into the pit lane comes Rawlings. That's interesting. So just as the track is getting really quick, Edgar, is in. So too is Marco Signoretti in the Mustang. So Tom Edgar in the Toyota, Signoretti in the Mustang, both in the pit lane at the time when, Harry, I would much rather be out on the track.
Yeah, you almost don't want to come off the track, actually, because the conditions are changing so much. But with 3 minutes and 20 seconds to go, Rawlings setting that fastest lap time now, a 1:49 dead on after 3 laps for Rawlings in that BMW M4, ahead of Williams and Orton. So it's BMW, Audi and Porsche currently the top 3. Then it's an Aston Martin and a BMW rounding out the top 5. So Edgar and Signoretti into the pits. They're currently in 6th and 7th, although I think that Mustang might be coming back out very quickly indeed. The Toyota GR Supra still registering as in the pits. We've got a new, though, provisional pole at the moment, or provisional top, I should say, before the combined times come in, and it's that Porsche Cayman.
It is. Jamie Orton going really well in the number 65 car. He rounds Redgate Corner now, getting a nice little tow from the Ginetta G56 just up the road there of... who's in that? It's Joe Wheeler, isn't it? Joe Wheeler's just gone 4th fastest, actually. The Ginetta working well in these conditions. Right, what has Richard Williams got for us? He's currently 5th. He goes 2nd, 4/10 off the fastest time. So Orton fastest, Williams 2nd fastest right now. Rawlings 3rd, ahead of Jack Brown in 4th, and Joe Wheeler drops down into 5th position. Tom Edgar is now rejoining the circuit. I wonder, Harry, whether those two cars, Signoretti and Edgar, were on wets. I wonder if that's why they pitted and they gambled the wrong way and they've been forced into coming into the pit lane. We'll try and find out if we can. For now, though, we're following Tom Rawlings out to the final corner. Personal best sector 1, outright fastest sector 2. Is it a new fastest time of the session? Yes, it is, by just under a 1/10 of a second. Tom Rawlings to the top.
You mentioned earlier as well that quali, or that all-time pole time, I think it was, the lap record for a GT4 car, still in the 134s. It's 134.898, 7th fielding in that Audi R8. So that Audi can go very quickly indeed. Currently in third in the hands of Williams, but I think come the second GT4 qualifying session, we're going to see it get even closer. Really though, it's just over a second covering the top 5 at the moment. So not quite as close as what we were seeing in the GT3 field, but then the rain was getting in the way of that one as well. But not great visibility there from board the Aston Martin of Miller. Good first sector, finding a 10th and a half or so as the Porsche Cayman now goes back to the top, 139.1, nearly just over 7/10 clear through the S's for Miller in the Aston Martin, finding more time, but not the overall best in the middle sector, coming down to that downhill braking zone now of the Melbourne hairpin.
That's possibly because he had about 3 different accidents in one corner coming through Coppice. That car was all over the place. He nearly went off on the way in, nearly went off on the way through, and then nearly ran wide. In fact, I think he did touch the grass coming off the corner. Let's see how quick this ends up being anyway. Still Autumn fastest then, a 39.1 is the target time, and this number 23 car of Josh Miller will have time for one more lap. He's 1.6 seconds off the pace now. No, he isn't. He's on to the fastest time now, a 39.0 by 300ths of a second. Despite those moments, he's gone fastest in the session.
Matt Topham in the pits. I don't know if he's just come in or has he been in the pits for a while, actually. The number 27, of course, currently leading the GT4 standings. What's the gap? 12.5 points, but he's down in 12th at the moment. So time to find, just behind Jindu and ahead of Knights and McDermott, who currently bring up this 14-strong field that we have in GT4 with 4, 3, 2, 1 second left, and that is the checkered flag.
Right, Tom Rawlings now to the top by half a second. However, I have had now confirmation from Bryn, thank you for this, Bryn. Tom Edgar in the Toyota, Marco Signoretti in the Mustang, they did go out on wet tyres. They tried to set a banker before changing on to slicks, much as Sandy Mitchell did in the previous session, and Tom Edgar has just gone fastest of anybody in Sector 1 on his slick tyres. This is his teammate, Jack Brown. No, it's not, sorry. Tom Edgar is in the Toyota. Excuse me, Jack Brown in the Century BMW, though, coming out of the last corner. And Jack Brown will go through to second fastest, just pips Josh Miller in the Aston Martin, who's still on a lap. But what is Edgar doing? Well, this is Richard Williams. We'll cover that in a moment because Williams has a purple sector as well. This in the middle part of the lap. And this could now become the fastest time. He's at the moment 9.5 tenths off the fastest lap time in this session. Comes through and sets a new benchmark of 38.0. They're finding chunks, they're finding seconds per lap, but is that going to be enough? Because Edgar is still on a lap. Here he comes out of the hairpin. This basically is one and only lap on slick tyres, and is it going to be enough to go to the top of the times? He's 8th at the moment. Tom Edgar brings the Toyota through and goes quickest by just under a quarter of a second. He only needed one lap on the slicks, Harry, and it was enough to go fastest.
Very nice work from the number 48, the Toyota GR Supra GT4 goes fast as he was finding chunks of time, nearly 3/10 in Sector 1, another 3/10 in Sector 2 as well. Was a good lap though by Williams, found half a second really, but still not enough to beat that Toyota, who goes to the top spot. Evans finding a bit of time in the closing stage as well, gets himself up into 9th. Paddock Motorsports in their McLaren round out the top 10, but Matt Topham down in 12th after all that, and the Aston Martin, current leader of the standings, along with his teammate Darren Turner.
It's becoming the theme, this, isn't it? What was it, 11th for Loggy on the grid in GT3? And
I think tomorrow it's just become a lot more complicated.
It has, as if it wasn't already. Of course, in GT4, thankfully, that session uninterrupted, so everyone had a fair crack of the whip. And, yeah, Topham very much outperformed by his championship rivals. But remember, bronze driver, Matt Topham, silver drivers in Richard Williams and Josh Miller. So perhaps to be expected, this could change in Q2. Right, Bryn is down in the pit lane. Bryn, what have you got for us?
I'm conscious you've got to jump in the car, Senan, but it couldn't have gone much better for you with Matt Topham finishing so far back.
Yeah, obviously all we can do is focus on our job. Sorry, I've got to go job.
There you go, focus on the job, and that's exactly what he's going to do right now. About to get in the car, Richard coming in, putting in a really, really solid time. I know that Tom Edgar did a brilliant time too, but Richard Williams has set it up perfectly, hasn't he, for this qualifying session and for tomorrow. You can see Senan just about to get into the car right now. We'll see if we can grab a quick word with Richard when he gets out and sorts Senan into the car as well, because it all comes down to the starting position for tomorrow's race. These guys second in the championship, fighting down Matt Topham and Darren Turner, and they had an absolute shocker, really. 12th down at the moment, so you can see that Richard Williams just strapping Senna fielding into the car. Quick chat about the conditions out there. Be interesting to see what Richard says. We know that these slicks seem to be the perfect tyre as we look at the tyres as well. They're absolutely pouring off with the steam at the moment, but just putting in the safety mesh there, and then Richard is now out of the car and ready to go. Richard, before you dive off, let's have a very quick word with you there, because that was as perfect as it can go, really, because you're second overall and Matt Topham down there in 12th with Josh Miller in 5th, so it went pretty much to plan.
Well, yeah, obviously P1 would have been nice. That would have put us out of any danger zones, but I think, yeah, I've been given the conditions and given how tricky it is out there. We took the risk and went for the slick and it paid off, so yeah, very happy with that.
Well, I appreciate it. Let me doorstep you and you still got your lid on. Well done there, Richard, thanks.
Excellent stuff. So Richard Williams, second fastest in that session, and that's good news for him. Second in the GT4 Championship, remember. Tom Edgar was fastest with that late effort on a fresher set of slick tyres, and he went fastest by just under a quarter of a second from Richard Williams in the Audi. Tom Rawlings and Jack Brown's BMW's 3rd and 4th, ahead of Josh Miller, the next of the championship contenders, in 5th. Jamie Orton was quick earlier on, but slipped to 6th, just ahead of the Ginetta of Joe Wheeler, and the Mustang of Marco Signoretti, which interestingly didn't increase its pace once it came in for slick tyres towards the end of the session. The second Academy Mustang then, of Evans, in 9th position ahead of Jundu in 10th position. The team Brit McLaren was 11th. Those two the highest placed Pro-Am runners, so expect those cars to fly in the next session. Newbridge Motorsport though, GT4 overall and Pro-Am championship leaders, only 12th fastest in the session and 9.1 seconds off the top, and that is the big thing for them. It's not so much the position, it's the deficit that they have, and Darren Turner's going to have a really hard time clawing that back in his qualifying session, which is coming up momentarily. The Luger Racing's Porsche was 13th, and the Motor Squad Racing Mercedes, number 7, which was in the hands of Ed McDermott in that session, rounded out the 14 runners. So, very, very topsy-turvy grid shaping up here in GT4, and that really is the big story, isn't it? Darren Turner, we know, is a very good driver. He should be one of the quickest in this session, but is he 9.1 seconds a lap quicker than the others? Doubtful.
Well, you tell that to a multiple Le Mans winner, a WEC winner, a 24-hour Nürburgring winner, Darren Turner. It's a bit like the Jules Gounon card. He's playing the Darren Turner card because you've got that pro driver in your seat sharing the car. You can feel like you're almost in safe hands a little bit. Brilliant to see the length and breadth that the British GT Championship attracts to this series in terms of pro drivers and manufacturer involvement as well from the cars on the grid and the teams operating them as well. 30 years celebrating the British GT Championship at the track where it all began as well. So making it even more wholesome there. As I think that's the Ginetta coming out, isn't it, from the pits, the number 56. We now are in to this second qualifying session for GT4. So the pros out on track, and that is Freddie Tomlinson at the wheel of that number 56 Ginetta, just 17 years old, silver driver. So young, some of these drivers, racing these mean machines on tricky tracks.
I was going to say, he doesn't remember the start of the British GT journey back in 1997. In fairness, neither do I, actually. 93, sorry, just about outdates me. But yeah, 30th anniversary of the British GT Championship this year. Also the 20th year of Intelligent Money, our series sponsors. So that's a nice little coincidence that we get to tie those two together, those two celebrations over the 2022 season. Right, so as the drivers get out there and try and get their tyres up to temperature, get up to speed, I think we can head down into the pit lane again, where I reckon Bryn Lucas has caught up with Matt Topham.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy. As you can see from the shots there, the sun is glinting off beautifully, and that was the big problem for Matt Topham. He was on wet tyres, and by the time they called it for the slicks, they were conscious he had to do 2 timed laps there to make it all stick for qualifying, and by the time they changed over to slicks, it was just way too late. He is absolutely despondent. He's, you know, you can look at him and he's looked very, very upset at the moment with it, but there's nothing he can do now. It's all down to Darren Turner.
Right, okay, thank you for that update, Bryn, and yeah, I had a feeling that Matt wasn't going to be very happy with the way that session went, but all is not lost. Darren Turner will go out there now, I'm sure, and do the very best job he can to salvage the situation.
Well, it's been such a fascinating qualifying for both GT3 and GT4. Drama everywhere you look as well. And not in a massive rush, these drivers, to get all on each other's cases. They're all fairly spaced out around the track. Just over 7 minutes of this qualifying session remain. You can see that Aston Martin in the background there behind the number 90 BMW that we're following, trying to weave and get heat into the tyres. Looking very, very dry on track now. So the conditions very different to what we first experienced with GT3. GT3 qualifying 1, and in that number 90 Century Motorsport BMW M4 should be Will Burns, the 32-year-old driver, and has got some decent pedigree in the British GT Championship as well, with Gus Burton winning that in 2021. 3 wins on the board, I think it was, in that season. So certainly knows how to get to the top step of the podium, does the driver of the number 90 BMW that we watch now come across the line and set his first proper qualifying lap time. And well, we're into the 3 minutes there, but I think there'll be time to find, though, as it's actually a 1:37 when you combine times. So it will be a 3 minutes combined, but a 1:37 over the board, but he's already been displaced.
Yeah, Jordan Collard takes the total previously fastest in the previous session with Tom Edgar at the wheel, takes that to provisional pole position. And here, Darren Turner in the Newbridge Aston Martin, on board then with the championship leader. And that is a dry line now through what was the wettest part of the circuit. That is a dry line through the Craner curves, out of the old hairpin. But I still think that the fastest times will come at the end of the session, because yes, the track is drier than it was before, but some of the rubber will have been washed off the track from that little downpour that we had, and certainly the track temperature will have dipped. So I think it is going to be at the end of the session that we see the very, very fastest times, and that's why there was no hurry from some of the teams to get out on track. The other telltale sign, Harry, that it's getting drier is that we're now starting to get track limits warnings as well. Drivers now starting to run a bit wider over those curves than they were. The number 48 car being warned about that here in the early stages of the session.
I love this onboard shot as well. You can just see on the left-hand side through the mirror, you can see Darren Turner, he's got the lid up. You can see his eyes where he's looking on the track as well as we come into the hairpin, and the light from the sun just glinting in his eyes as well. So that plays a part, especially if you haven't got your visor down. Visibility, even when in the broad daylight, if the sun catches you at the wrong moment, you're blinded. Senan Fielding, though, goes to the top in that Audi. Burns across the line as well, slots in behind him in that BMW. Can Darren Turner work some magic here through that dry line in the Aston Martin? What's it going to be for Darren Turner? Where did he end up in the end?
He ends up, Darren Turner, only 12th on combined times. That was not a full Darren Turner flying lap, I don't think. No. Jordan Collard, having had that lap time disallowed, of course, dropped back down the grid. He's just put another one in, hopefully a legal one this time, and that puts him back onto provisional pole by 8 tenths now over this car, Senan Fielding, in the Audi. Senan is third fastest within this session. That is second on combined times, and still well clear of those that they're fighting for the championship. For reference, the number 23 Aston Martin is 8th at the moment, and as we've documented, Darren Turner still languishing down in 12th position. That qualifying lap record, remember, a 1:34.0, so we're now at 35.1s within this session. Jordan Collard at 35.1 last time out, so we're getting down to proper slick racing lap times now.
We're nearly back there, and the sun really streaking down on this Donington Park circuit using the full Grand Prix layout. 2.49 miles, 4.02 kilometres on board with Senan Fielding, currently second with his teammate Richard Williams in the standings, 12.5 points back from taking the GT4 title. But he goes well around here, does Senan Fielding, and looking quick at the moment. Currently on combined times, he's second, but he's coming around the final corner now. And how the sector time's been looking for Senan Fielding as he comes across the line. And he goes to the top.
Yes, he does, because he took a chunk of time in sectors 2 and 3 over Jordan Collard. So by just over 4 tenths now, the number 42 car is fastest. Whoops, that's a big moment, going into Coppice Corner, and off into the gravel trap goes Seb Hopkins. Seb Hopkins currently mid-grid in the number 65 car, and that's not helped his case, unfortunately. If I say mid-grid, 4th on combined times is the Team Parker Porsche. Thankfully no damage done, but that's a very easy place to go off, because you've got very little grip going into the corner anyway, and in the wet conditions, of course, that doesn't help. Richard Williams enjoying himself now that he's not in the car. He's done his bit, and he's watching Senan Fielding do the job. But Senan Fielding has already been beaten by Jordan Collard. They're trading pole position, and now by 17 thousandths, it's the Toyota back on pole.
Jordan Collard is loving these conditions. He's flying in that Toyota at the moment in the number 48, as you say, currently on provisional pole, but there is nothing in it. 17 thousandths of a second currently splitting Collard and Fielding for provisional pole, and then it's another couple of tenths back to third place man at the moment. But we're seeing that Toyota come through. He's going for another lap, but he's got a little bit of traffic in front of him. It's the number 27 Newbridge Aston Martin, so that's Darren Turner in front of him as well. And Darren Turner, it's not really working out for him at the moment, still down in 12th. He's going quicker though, so still 2 minutes left in this session, but he's got traffic as well with the other Aston Martin in front of him. And then I think there's a BMW skating off into the distance as well, so they've all found themselves all bunched up in the same part of the track with just less than 2 minutes to go.
Now, both of the Astons are struggling though, because well, Darren Turner is 4th fastest in this session, but Jamie Day in the R Racing car is all the way down in 13th of 14 drivers, so that's really not helping their championship aspirations. Jordan Collard comes through, he's already on pole by 17 thousandths of a second, and it stays at that margin. He's got time for one more lap, and there Tom Edgar watches on nervously from the pit lane as he hopes to be starting that car from pole position tomorrow. Remember, the drivers who were out in Q1 will be the first drivers out. That was the most half-hearted smile I've ever seen. Tom Edgar is not wanting a camera shoved in his face right now. This is what he wants to see. Jordan Collard barrelling down through the old hairpin, but the improvements in sector times just aren't coming now.
No, they're not. It seems like the best of the track conditions have faded away slightly. Perhaps track temperature dropping slightly as well with the air temperature as we get into the latter part of towards the evening now, 5:10 local time here in Donington. As the clock counts down from 50 seconds, we ride on board with Senan Fielding once more into the braking zone, into the S's, clout the left, then clout the right curve, carry as much speed as you can through it. We saw a few cars, I think in one of the support categories earlier on, getting all out of shape coming through there. So easy to do so, into the braking zone for the Melbourne hairpin. Great place to watch if you're here at Donington. Get yourself down to the hairpin. You can see very busy here on Saturday in the British GT paddock. So brilliant to see so many people enjoying not just the British GT Championship, but all the supporting classes as well. It's a busy weekend of racing action. Round the final corner then for Senan Fielding.
Indeed, comes to the line. What's he going to do? Senan Fielding not likely to improve on this lap now. No personal best in the sectors. Jordan Collard had been improving, but I think you can tell that's not going to happen at the end of the lap because he runs wide. Darren Turner nips back up the inside. Seb Hopkins just jumped up into 6th place on the grid, deposing the Ginetta down a position. But as the checkered flag flies, the Toyota was the last car across the line. In theory then, Jordan Collard with time for one more lap, but he's right behind Darren Turner, who steps out of the way. So Turner bailing on that lap. Darren could do no better than 5th fastest within this session, which means the championship leading car is going to start at best 12th on the grid for the championship decider tomorrow, and that Topham will have it all to do in that first stint to try and stay in contention.
Crucial, just seeing Jamie Day got up into 4th
yes.
right then, sharing that car with Josh Miller, the R Racing Aston Martin. They're 3rd in the championship battle, still in this fight. And I think they must be the youngest driver pairing on the grid, as we see the Toyota having a little moment. But youngest driver pairing now, I think 17 years old Jamie Day, 16 years old Josh Miller, powering that team forward. But a good lap at the end there to get in for Jamie Day up into the top 4. But clearly, with the checkered flag out, drivers still pushing.
Yes, because now we are getting fast sectors. Mo Ritz, who I haven't mentioned all session, purple in sector 1, personal best in sector 2. So Mo Ritz 7th fastest at the moment. That car is at the moment starting 10th place on the grid provisionally. But what can Mo do? He
lost a bit of time in that final sector.
You're right.
I think he's confirmed that 10th place just in front of Trundley at the moment. Darren Turner, though, still going. Where is Turner? Is he coming round now in the final corner and across the line?
That is Jamie Day. Turner, I think, has bailed, hasn't he? Yeah, there's Turner.
He's bailed.
Indeed. So there we go. No improvement for him then. Jamie Day, 5th fastest within the session, but as we've said, that's 4th on the grid on combined tyres. But it is celebrations down at the Speedworks team because it is pole position for Tom Edgar, who was out in the first session. Jordan Collard out in session 2. The Toyota Gazoo Racing UK squad run by the Speedworks team very happy, but actually Richard Williams pretty happy as well. 2nd on the grid for Richard and Senan Fielding. Just a couple of spots though ahead of the R Racing Aston Martin, but they are going to have the track position advantage in the championship battle for the start of tomorrow's race. So Jordan Collard brings the Toyota back towards the pit lane, where he'll be greeted by not only Tom Edgar but Bryn Lucas as well.
Well, Tom, it's been a tricky qualifying session with what's going out on track. Is it dry, is it wet? But you guys managed that one to absolute perfection.
Yeah, we just about scraped that by a hundredth of a second. Yeah, I'm really pleased with Jordan's performance on my own. yeah, couldn't be happier really. First pole.
You've done pretty well here earlier on in the season at Donington Park with a podium. Are you hoping to go a couple better, or are you conscious that there's a championship fight going on around you?
Honestly, I see myself as the only one with nothing to lose up at the front, so absolutely I so want to go 2 better this time.
Talk to us a bit about your time in the car then, because it's been a changeable season for the team. They've had a couple of different driver options, should we say, although you've had the lion's share of the time.
Yes, absolutely. It's been a bit turbulent, but I'd really like to thank the team for trying their best to put always the best people in with me. I think Christian and Amy and all the race engineers that we've had have really done a great job this season so far.
Well, 3rd place earlier on. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Maybe even a top spot. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, big congratulations to Tom Edgar and Jordan Collard then. They are provisionally your pole sitters in the GT4 element of the British GT grid by 17 thousandths of a second. Zenon Fielding and Richard Williams second, Chris Salkeld and Tom Rawlings third, and Jamie Day and Josh Miller for R Racing for fastest. Will Burns and Jack Brown's BMW is next, ahead of the Hopkins and Autumn Porsche, and then the Ginetta of Freddie Tomlinson and Joe Wheeler, with Matt Cowley and Marco Signoretti's Ford Mustang 8th, and their teammates Wilmore and Evans in 9th position. Then Mo Ritson put in a really good time there towards the end of the session to drag that Paddock Motorsport McLaren up the order, ahead of Bobby Trundley and Darren Turner. 12th position on the grid for Darren Turner. It's going to be a very, very difficult battle for him and Ian Loggy in the GT3 element. Both of our Clash Championship leaders starting deep in the field. You will not want to miss the Donington Decider. We'll have the live build-up here from Donington beginning at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. The race due to start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Donington delivering already here, and it's only qualifying day. Imagine the drama that 2 hours of racing tomorrow with pit stops, perhaps some weathering coming as well. It's going to be one you won't want to miss. From myself, Andy McEwen, Bryn Lucas and Harry Benjamin, thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.